Hi there. In this lecture we're going to have a look at Bobby Fischer's game against Edmar Mednis in the 1957-58 US Open, round 8. So e4 from Fischer, c5, knight f3, knight c6. And Fischer at this point in his career was using the King's Engine attack system. So a nice use of a system, avoiding a theoretical debate and creating a kind of coiled spring of energy just waiting to be released. So fianchettoing the bishop here. And here we see knight bd2, black castles, rook e1, b6, and now e5. This looks as though it might be a little bit risky to have this advanced pawn here. Can black undermine it? In fact, black doesn't bother hitting it, but plays d5. White does have, it seems, adequate resources to try and defend it at the moment, in any case. We see knight f1, queen c7, bishop f4, d4, which does concede the e4 square a little bit, queen d2, rook e8, and now bishop h6, bishop h8, and now h4. It looks as though white has a pleasant enough position. But you might ask, hold on a sec, what's going on here with knight takes e5? This is very interesting, isn't it? Well, at the moment, knight takes e5 is actually impossible because of the fianchetto bishop looking at the rook. So let's have a look at that. Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, yeah, the rook would drop. So we have bishop b7, but now surely e5 is a problem, right? Well, actually, Fischer plays this 1 to h2. Very, very interesting. And we have the pawn being taken. So what's the idea here? Knight takes e5, bishop takes g2. This doesn't look good if king takes. Black's just going to take there, and there's just now it's an important central pawn. What do you think Fischer played in this position, which engines actually agree is actually a small edge for white, the way Fischer played this? So what do you think white plays in this position if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video? Okay. White actually plays knight takes f7, a desperado tactic. If the knight's going to be taken anyway, this is a great desperado. And now, yeah, black plays a move which makes things a whole load worse, queen c6. King takes f7 is actually probably the best after king takes. White has a small edge. If bishop d5, this is just bad for black, knight takes, and the dark squares have been totally compromised. For example, this position could end up winning material for white. But yeah, king takes was actually the best. This move, queen c6, now knight takes h8, weakening black's dark squares. So it's as if both sides have their weaknesses being exposed here. Bishop h3 threatens mate. Okay. If king takes h8 as an alternative, f3 would actually win this bishop cruelly after g4. The bishop could be trapped and munched by the king, believe it or not. This is going to be munched by the king. So we see here bishop h3, f3 parrying the mate threat. But now, after king takes, yeah, the same kind of thing. g4, the bishop is kind of closed in. We see knight d5, queen g5. e5 now is played. Here, rook takes e5, knight e3. Yeah, this looks like a very vicious game with this bishop about to be, trapped potentially. Rook e1, queen d6. We have rook takes e8, rook takes e8. Queen f4, and now queen takes, bishop takes, but black is able to release the bishop. That's the whole point, putting pressure on g4 here. Fischer takes on e3, but it does leave black with a vulnerable pawn on e3. So after g5, white's still better, and this g5 keeps the king out of key squares in an endgame, especially f6. We see bishop d7, knight f1, bishop c6, and now rook takes e3, not minding this endgame. This is a very instructive moment, a great time to take on e3, because it seems now after bishop takes f3, white's king is free to walk on the dark squares away from that bishop, and with tempo, so king f2, and is the first to get into the center. The use of that f6 is deprived, so unfortunately, now white's king gets a superior position, and is able potentially to come down and munch these pawns, harass these pawns. So king e7, we see knight d5 check, king f7, and now king d6. Yeah, this is a very lost position, this endgame. after bishop c7, knight f4, bishop g4, king c7, bishop f3. Bishop d1 is pointless. White will just play c3. So bishop f3, c3 here, b5, d4, and this pawn, this passed pawn in the center is very strong. The kings have the distant opposition, so the pawn could be carried through. Mednis in desperation gives up his bishop. It's hopelessly lost now, as it was in the last few moves anyway. Knight takes g6 is neat simplification, creating a protected passed pawn, and black is just totally lost here. So letting the pawn go through there, the g-pawn, and then resigns there. So a very, very interesting, instructive game, showing how kind of Fischer was using a kind of polite, seemingly tame repertoire. But this also has been used, the King's Engine attack, by the likes of Tigran Petrosian, another world chess champion. It seems the King's Engine attack system has had some really hefty exponents behind it. So if you did want a system, the King's Engine attack system, as shown here, is just very, very interesting. How this e5 pawn seemingly left just hanging for nothing, but in this sequence. But this surprising desperado move here, it's a very interesting situation for the desperado. And who would have thought, because sometimes you'd be kind of insecure about weakening the squares around your king, losing that fianchetto bishop. That's a genuine concern quite a lot of the time. But the desperado tactic here is very, very instructive of my view. So I think philosophical points, just look objectively at the position and don't be biased by losing your fianchetto bishop. And sometimes you have the potential of weakening the opponent's squares anyway. So a very concrete tactic here which established the big advantage. But black didn't react appropriately. Queen c6 made things a lot worse rather than king takes f7. So this situation where the bishop's being virtually trapped, bishop f5, g4, led to a very desperate skirmish from black, having to sack a pawn there. And this simplification procedure just left black hopelessly lost in this endgame. The knight is actually superior here to that bishop, and the king walking in to the position. So yeah, black's position, you know, is just lost, plainly lost, without any counterplay as such. That's another aspect here, very minimal counterplay. Okay, I hope you got something from this game. Very, very interesting. Thanks very much. Hi guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you want more Bobby Fischer content, check out my Kingscrusher TV page. And if you go to the bottom of it, it starts at the bottom with 1970 to 1992. I also have two other Bobby Fischer courses. I found him absolutely fascinating to study. So there's 1956 to 62, early in his career, and there's 1963 to 68. So I hope you find those interesting. You might want to check them out, all the free samples. And I hope you really enjoyed this video. Comments, questions, likes, shares, always appreciated. Thanks very much.